You're 3 months in and no placement yet. Well, before you panic, let me tell you something that might completely change how you look at your recruitment business right now. Because what you think is failure might actually be you following the exact same path that successful recruiters take. All because I was on a call recently with someone who'd been in their niche for a few months, a very technical and very specialized one to mention it. And they asked me the question that I've had several times, which is this normal? Should I be worried? And here's what most people don't tell you. When you're starting out in recruitment, they show you the success stories, the big billings, the placements, but nobody talks about what the first few months look like, especially when you're building from scratch. And the silence, that just creates a little bit of uncertainty, maybe even anxiety, and that can actually hurt your business. So let me give you the real numbers, not the perfect scenario numbers, just the actual ones. Because if somebody came to me today and said they've been working in their niche for 3 months and hadn't made a placement yet, I wouldn't be concerned at all. I'll give you my own example. I actually made my first placement in my first week, which is like an exception. It's not common when I first started my business. What was most important was how long it took me to get my second placement, and that was about 4.5 months. So if I just disregard the first one, it would have taken me 4.5 months to make my first placement. That said, I didn't have the automation tools and some of the tools that are available today. But let me explain why that's important. Because in recruitment, and I've worked in a few different types of businesses, so I've seen several sides of small businesses and large businesses, the perfect scenario is a placement in 3 months. Perfect scenario. We obviously don't live in a perfect world. And the realistic profit and loss that any business owner who knows what they're doing would build would be month 6. That's when you'd actually expect the first deal to come through by. But here's what matters more than the actual timeline itself. It's not about whether you've done a deal yet, but whether you're actually following the process and it's working. So just think of your recruitment business like a pipeline with specific stages. The deal is just the end product of everything that comes before it. So instead of obsessing over why haven't I made a placement yet, you need to ask a different question. Are you getting interviews? Are you getting lots of interviews but no offers? Well, then that's where your gap is, because something isn't right in how candidates are being presented or how they're being prepared for interview. Like there's a gap in there somewhere. And then the next question follows, like, are you actually sending enough CVs? And then you can reverse engineer it and say, are you speaking to enough candidates? And you can go a step further and just say, are you actually getting any vacancies? Like there's so many variables that go into it. And for anybody who's been on calls with me, whether you're an experienced agency owner or you're a recruiter looking to start your own, then I always ask the same questions, which is break me down your numbers. Tell me what you're used to working at. What do you expect from yourself in terms of client meetings, candidate meetings, and what do you expect to change? Because for me, it's a bit like being a detective. I have to work backwards. I have to understand what the outcome is and the goal that you're aiming for and make sure that what I provide to you is going to be the bridge that enables that goal to be achieved. So here's something that came up on a call, and I thought I'd share it because I think it would help. I had a recruiter who had told me that they'd been in this situation 3 months, no placements. And they said that they had made nearly 400 touch points with candidates. They felt like it wasn't enough. And they were right, but not for the reason that they thought. It wasn't that the 400 or so meant that it was automatically bad. It was that they had a technical issue, meaning that they weren't sending enough connections. They were literally connecting in on LinkedIn, and this was their primary strategy, 10 to 15 connections a day, when they could have been doing a bit more. And the lesson that we took away from it is, yes, you need to know your baseline activity numbers. If you can connect with 200 people a week on LinkedIn and your acceptance rate is around 20%, then that's roughly 40 new connections a week. Over 3 months, this begins to ramp up. And over 3 months, it should be the case that you're now having consistent candidate conversations. But if something is stopping that, well, there's the problem, because we need to establish, are you not putting enough time into it, or are you actually just not doing the activities? Because if you're not doing the activities, then you're actually not even testing whether your process works. You're just testing whether limited activity produces results, which I can tell you without testing it, it won't. And if you think that you're doing enough, just ask yourself, is it even possible to increase it by 10%? Because if it is possible, then the answer is no, you're not doing enough. And this is the dangerous part that nobody really warns about. And that is that at the 3 month mark, there is a psychological challenge that's more harmful than any other problems that you might encounter in your business. And that is that you start to compare yourself to people who have already established themselves in a like-for-like business. You see somebody else billing consistency and you think, why isn't that me yet? But you're comparing your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10. And I've seen people take nearly a year to get their first deal over the line. I'm not saying that's a norm, just saying it's happened. I've seen some people take 2 years to get their first deal over the line. Obviously, they got paid very well in a very well paid niche, but most people don't have the patience for it. That's why overall recruitment is just completely untapped as a business idea and a business niche. Like there just isn't any real saturation that takes place in it. And when you look at those examples of people who took 1 year, 18 months, even 2 years to get their first placement over the line, their process was perfect. They stuck to it. They just hadn't found the right hook of candidate and client matching for a certain period of time. And when they did, they went from billing nothing to massive numbers. And then next thing you know, the next deal is around the corner and the next one's around the next corner. And everything just begins to spiral out of control and happen so much quicker thereafter. Because in that moment and at that stage, the worst thing that you can do is let it get to your head. Because if you start making decisions from a place of panic rather than process, you're going to start changing things. And these may well be things that are actually working. And instead of doubling down on them, all you do is you abandon maybe your niche, then you start to change your messaging, then you change your wording, then you change the type of email that you're sending, and you basically just threw away your efforts of the last few months of building your business. Just don't do that. Instead, here's what I'd suggest, all from my experience. Go back to what are the fundamentals. Think about it like a pre-flight check and ask yourself the question, firstly, do you actually understand your niche? Can you clearly articulate your niche and why those candidates matter to those employers? Check one. Next one, is your LinkedIn profile positioned as someone who specializes in that specific niche? Second check. Next, are you actually reaching out to people daily? Not just when you feel motivated, not when you feel like it, not when you're in a good mood. Like, are you consistently and daily reaching out to clients and candidates in that niche? Check three. And the next one, when candidates respond, do you have a clear process of convincing them to get on calls and then qualifying them to make sure that they're a good fit for the vacancies that you're recruiting for? And last but not least, are you tracking your numbers? Are you tracking how many outreaches you do for clients and for candidates daily, weekly, monthly? Because all of those numbers, when you track them and you keep check of all of these things, they eventually pay off. And when the payoff does come, it won't make sense how this payoff has come unless you've tracked the numbers leading up to that point. Because those numbers don't show perfection. What they show is honesty. They hold you to account before you get to a position where you have to ask somebody else to give you a helping hand. Those numbers are just an honest reflection to you. They show you not that you're failing, but that you're building, and this takes a little bit of time. So I get it. Like 3 months feels like a long time when you're watching your bank account and wondering if this is going to work. And then you start to question yourself, like, did I make the right career choice? And is this the right thing? I've been doing this with my own business for over 10 years. I was once a recruiter. I quit my job and I started my own business. And now I've coached hundreds of people going through the exact same stage. And the ones who make it aren't the ones who got lucky in month one. They're the ones who trusted the process long enough to let it work. They're the ones who showed up consistently even when results weren't there. They're the ones who continuously ask questions, making sure that they have an in-depth understanding of what the heck is going on. So I could tell you that if you are in the midst in that journey, then your first deal is coming. But I can tell you this for sure, it's not going to come because you're stressed about it. It's not going to come because you're worried about it. It's going to come because you're building the pipeline that makes it inevitable. So instead of counting the days since you started, just start counting the activities that move you forward, because that's the only number that actually matters. And it reminds me so much of when I first started. I only set one target for myself. I wasn't even tracking how many candidates or clients I was speaking to. Yes, it was around about 100, 150 touch points that I was making on a daily basis. But I gave myself one target, and that one target was book 5 interviews every single week. Didn't care about any of the other numbers. And until I did not book 5 interviews every single week, I just wasn't happy with my results. I wasn't happy with my work. And I did whatever it took to make sure that happened. Because I was one of the lucky ones. I've made my first placement in my first week. But the next 4.5 months told a completely different story. And had I given up at any moment within those 4.5 months, which were brutally painful, I wouldn't be here to tell the story today. So if this has helped, let me know in the comments. I actually read every single comment and I reply to all of them myself as well. And I was actually just about to ask you to subscribe to the video or the channel, because I've never done that before, but I had to make this point because I was looking over the analytics on my channel, and it turns out that about 60% of the people who watch my videos, they're not actually subscribed. This is what I'd like you to do if you've not subscribed. I want you to hold your hand up like this, and I just want you to slap it as hard as you can, then press the subscribe button, and I'll see you all in the next video.